Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for Livestream 4. We hope you enjoyed the presentations and have some burning questions to ask. Please drop them below the chat and we'll make our best to answer them all. You probably recognize me. My name is Olga and I'm leading marketing for mobile web. And today I will combine the roles of the speaker and the moderator. And you also probably recognize Rafaela. Rafa, do you mind introducing yourself for those who maybe missed the beginning of the video? And also I have one question for you. What's one good skill or habit you picked up during the quarantine?
Sure. So hi, everyone. I am Rafa, and I work in the market insight team at Google, meaning that I run market research, and you probably have recognized me from the video that you just viewed. One thing that I picked during the quarantine, I guess, is like I started again to doing yoga. So it's not something really exciting maybe, but it's very useful for like the back pain that I normally have. So yeah, I just started that.
Okay, very good habit. I'm into yoga now as well. And we have a couple of new faces here. So Marisa was our partner for the mobile pains and gains research. Marisa, do you mind introducing yourself? And same question to you.
Thanks, Olga. I'm Marissa Miller from SCIM, the Decision Behavior Experts, and I am a qualitative insight specialist in consumer behavior. In terms of the quarantine, I have actually invited a new puppy into my home. Her name is Ninja, and she's equal parts cute and mischievous, just like her name. So apologies in advance if she attempts to chime in for a question or maybe two.
I really hope she does. And finally, we have John, who worked with us on the Milliseconds Make Millions study. John, over to you.
Hello, Olga. Thank you. And hello, everyone. My name is John, spelled Can, pronounced John, Turkish name, CSJ. I work for 55, which is a data consultancy trying to enable the brands that we work with use data a bit better and use it for value generation, both for them and their consumers. I work in a team called Expertise and Innovation, and my team's job is essentially making sure the technical details are excellent and the methodologies that we come up with for interesting studies, such as the site speed study Olga just talked about, is robust. And the thing that I can tell about the thing that I picked up during quarantine is I'm now into building terrariums, and that is why you see a lot of cacti around me. I thought this would actually come in pre-filled, but it was just an empty container, so I had to go into terrarium building. I've only killed 2 cacti so far, so I think that's a success.
Okay, very interesting hobby to pick up, John. So we have a few questions that came in through the registration form before, and I'll start with those, but we'll switch off to the live questions. So please submit your questions below the video. And one question that came in was about how can we understand what's top of mind for the users and how we can use it to improve conversions. Marisa, you're studying a lot of user behavior. Could you maybe answer that one?
Thanks, Olga. So as shoppers, we have some basic fundamental shopping needs that if a brand can tap into, or if a brand, can you hear me well? Or if a brand undermines, can lead to purchase, but also can really disrupt purchase. So these needs that we found were immediacy, convenience, trust, value, and the ability to gain consensus. So each of the barriers we found in this research, undermine one of these needs, if not more. For instance, fragmented comparison, that undermines value. If your shoppers don't feel they can easily compare between the offers on your mobile sites, they may well question whether they're getting the best value or if they're making the best choices for them and their family. Bringing items to life, if this isn't done well, it undermines trust. So if the brand isn't giving a good enough impression of the product or experience, you may leave the shopper questioning if what they think they see on your mobile site is actually what they're going to get. Unfulfilled autofill and persistent pop-ups, they get in the way of convenience. These features don't make it as easy or seamless as possible to complete the purchase process. And scrolling fatigue, this gets in the way of immediacy because if the shopper struggles to find information as quick as possible, they may not want to purchase or give up on the purchase through infinite scrolling. So if a brand can really address these barriers and therefore tap into these needs rather than undermine them, you're much more likely to get them to purchase.
Okay, great. Thank you, Marissa. Another question that came in before was, how does one actually estimate the impact of their mobile optimizations on revenue? John, will you be happy to answer maybe on using the example of the speed study?
I will be very happy to try. So there is not a single way to do this. Essentially, one could try to take an incrementality approach and test things out, and that would effectively try to slow your site speed down, kind of a virtual fashion. None of the brands that we kind of raised this idea with was looking to this positively, for obvious reasons. No one wants to slower sites just to get the data out of it. So in the end, we opted out for some time series analysis. So the other way that we actually did is collecting speed data and collecting website behavior data. So the two axes of data coming in from web analytics and coming in from a site speed tools, mainly page speed insights API from Google. And we essentially overlaid those two time series and used some statistical methods to understand the relationship between the speed curve and how it impacts the behavior curve.
Okay, yeah, thank you, John. And we have some live questions coming in. So Michael Richter is asking our favorite question, will the slides be available after the session? Michael, yes, we will be sharing the slides, but in return, we ask you to submit the feedback form and let us know how we did. So the feedback form should be available, and we'll send it around after the session as well. And once you complete it, there should be a link there to download the slides. And we have another question from Prathamesh. What metrics and tools did you use to measure site speed in the study? John, I think that's a question for you, if you don't mind.
Yes, so I gave kind of a sneak preview in my answer just before. So we used the web analytics tools of the brands that participated in the study, and there are 37 brands in the study. And it was either Google Analytics or Adobe Analytics. So we would essentially map every single page into different page types, because one of the things about this study is understanding the impact of speed in the user behavior and progression of the funnel. So we got the conversion or the behavior data from the analytics tools, and we got the speed data from mainly Page Speed Insights API. I'm pretty sure you have heard of the Lighthouse, which is available as an audit tool in the Chrome developer tools. So essentially, we used its API to get the metrics from it programmatically for every hour. And we were able to build an hourly data set that gave us the speed end of the time series. So we had 36 metrics from the API, and 4 of them came out as significant. And I'm happy to say that this is actually in the report as well, but those 4 are max server latency, first meaningful paint, estimated input latency, and observed load. So based on our study, those 4 are the ones to look at in order to estimate performance.
Okay, thanks, John. And we have another question relating to the speed study from Mario. Does the loading speed of the page have breakpoints for improvements in conversions? Like if it is 2 seconds and you go to 1.9, probably the gain is bigger versus going from 0.4 to 0.3 loading. I think I can answer that, and maybe then, John, you can add to that. So in terms of the study, the brands were studied, the site speed was pretty stable and was fluctuating around 0.0 seconds around their speed. So that's the impact you see. But yeah, I understand that there might be different impact. What we saw from our previous studies is around 1 second is where you get the most impact. So once your site is under 1 second, it's already fast, and that's where most of the impact happens. And maybe, yeah, going from 0.4 to 0.3 won't have as much of an impact. But as long as you're crossing this 1 second mark, that's where you will see the biggest gain in conversions. John, do you have something to add to this?
Yeah, essentially, I would add that the 4 metrics that I just talked about, they're not all about the initial loading of the page. Obviously, that's a very important aspect of how people perceive how fast a site is. But things like server latency or input latency, they're also about how responsive a site is. So they will kind of hang on to the user experience with every single tab of the user. So that's why it is quite hard to kind of put it on a linear scale and say that from 0 to 10, what happens, because site speed and those metrics especially are with us throughout the entire engagement with the page.
Okay, great. And we have another question from Michael about speed. Talking about speed, often teams blame each other being responsible for low speed. Too much third-party tags, ad testing snippets, editors selected images being too big, and so on. How would you approach a more holistic view? What do you think about the page budget approach? So I think we are a big proponents of speed budgets, performance budgets at Google. And you saw an example from Farfetch where exactly they built a company-wide performance business calculator to have some numbers that would they could present to all the other teams, and all teams using it as a source of truth. So whenever they want to add a new feature, image, any kind of content to the page, or maybe any new marketing tag, they can evaluate what will be the business impact of that versus what will be the impact of speed, and subsequently the business impact of slowing down the page, and they compare the both and make an informed decision whether this is something good to try out. So yeah, building kind of an understanding and consensus across the teams and having some numbers that you can compare and use would be great. John, I know you also use some kind of speed monitoring and dashboards in your practice. Do you have something to add to that?
I think you covered most of it. Essentially, it is not an easy thing to look at, to really experience and to understand how people are experiencing your site. So the Chrome user experience is quite a good one to understand what people are doing based on different connection speeds. And your web analytics tool will always have some speed metrics as well. So it would be beneficial to take advantage of those as much as you can.
Okay, great. And we have another question from Pedro. What advice would you give to marketing teams that insist on having pop-ups versus the pop-up issues, the page speed pop-up issues mentioned before? I think maybe, John, you can start on speed, and Marisa can maybe add later on the pop-up as a barrier. So, John.
I'd be happy to. So I think this is more about the friction between kind of the product teams or marketing teams wanting more features on their websites, be it pop-ups or not. And then the other side of the technical people just wanting their site to perform well and speedy. I think A/B testing, as with anything, is the main answer here. Just experimenting and understanding if the improvement in speed kind of gives you more benefits from a commercial and user experience point of view compared to having that feature or not having that feature. So just making sure that your A/B test includes how the speed kind of changes across variations is probably the best place to start.
Okay, and Marisa, are you happy to add something on the pop-up issue that we observed?
As we saw from Rafa's presentation, persistent pop-ups is a real issue digitally, but especially in a mobile environment where the screen is already compromised in size, and it really distracts from the shopping journey. So it takes away from the convenience and the immediacy of that shopping journey and someone's willingness to convert to purchase. It also can really undermine the trust of a brand. They could feel that they are pushed to certain offers. They may feel that they're purposely being distracted, and it gets in the way of the shopper's desire to want to purchase in that instant when they already have such a small screen and a pop-up just blasts in front of their face, maybe as they're inputting their credit card details, and they may make a mistake.
If I may add just one point on this, also remember that consumers are trying to perform these kind of purchases when they have a short burst of time. So the more you are providing pop-ups, the more you are distracting them, the more they forget, and the more they don't purchase, let's say. So there is also this component about, yes, it is a fragmented journey. If you also fragment the experience, you will just make consumers to give up.
Okay, great. And we have another question relating to site speed from Emmanuel. Can you recommend a tool to measure website speed? There are many ways, but what would be the best to replicate loading as perceived by users? So if we're talking about user perception, we recommend using Chrome User Experience Report. So this is real field data, collected from Chrome users on how fast your site loaded for them in real life. And you can see how the speed changed over time and maybe different geographies, and that would be like your real data, how fast your site loaded for the users. So we recommend that, but don't forget that this data can be impacted by what kind of devices your users are using, what kind of network they are connecting. So once you may be entering a new segment, a new market, that can fluctuate depending on things that are not actually attributed to your site, whereas using tools like Lighthouse, for example, helps you to identify what changes in speed happen due to the code and different attributes of your own site. So we kind of recommend using both and making sound decisions based on those data and seeing where you can actually make the impact. So hopefully that helps. And we have another question from Michael. What's your opinion on the difference between technical page speed and perceived speed? Do you think it is worth occupying the user while he has to wait due to API response times or something similar? So yes, Michael, I think we believe that occupying time helps users to perceive speed a little bit faster. Of course, you need to be smart about it, but we know a few cases where brands manage to provide some useful information or some kind of interaction for users before the site loads, and it's actually a very nice experience. And there is, of course, a big difference in how users actually perceive speed versus the real speed happening. So if you can occupy their time with something, we definitely recommend to do it. Okay, and then we have another question from Sohaila. What are good examples of websites that make comparison easy on mobile? Marisa, can you answer that?
Yes, absolutely. So in this research, we hear about a lot of bad experiences with comparing websites and offers on mobile, but we do hear some nice ones every once in a while. So sites that are flight aggregators, like a Skyscan or an Expedia, actually make it very easy for shoppers to quickly and seamlessly compare across different brands and sites. As well as, Amazon too stands out as one that makes it really easy to compare different products and the features like for like.
Yes, and I would recommend you also downloading our cheat sheet on solutions, where we kind of try to find some good ideas of how we can make comparison a little bit easier. But this is definitely something for web developers and designers to think about. We definitely think there should be more done in that space, and it's a great place for innovation. And we have 2 questions from Milan. So start with the first one. Are the users disappointed when they are on mobile web and the homepage and listing pages load faster because accelerate mobile pages are used, and then feel that other pages are slower? How this can be improved? So Milan, this is a perfect plug for, I think, our next session on progressive web apps, because actually with progressive web apps, you can ensure that subsequent pages are loading faster. So they are kind of preloading on your user's device while they are still on the previous page. And so the full flow is fast, and PWA and AMP work very nicely together. So please join for our next session, and Craig will tell you more about that. And second question from Milan, please explain more details about the tool that you mentioned Farfetch used to measure the speed. What is that tool and how can it be implemented? So the tool is a pretty easy tool. It's actually a spreadsheet with some formulas. How they got the coefficients, it was in a way similar to what we did with the speed study. They ran a bunch of tests and saw how different site speed and load times impact different different revenue-related metrics for them. And then they've built a calculator. So they knew if we, for example, time to interactive metric increases by, say, 0.1 second, what will be the impact on our revenue, on our bounce rates, on our conversion rates, and what ultimately that will be in dollars. And now with every feature, they kind of try implement it, see how much it will slow or improve their site speed. And then they input these numbers into the calculator and have the output. So this is roughly the story of Farfetch. I think we will be publishing an article on Think with Google about it pretty soon, so there should be more details there, so please stay tuned. And we have a question from Maria. How critical might be site speed for B2B businesses? We didn't study B2B businesses well, lead generations sometimes can fall under the B2B category, but we didn't specifically study the B2B category. John, do you have any point of view on that?
So as you said, in the scope of the study, we didn't have any B2B studies. Even our lead gen were quite B2C. So I don't really want to have a non-data driven opinion. If I had to give my expert opinion is yes, but in not as much as what you have with a B2C context, especially if it's a business that is already in business with you. But yeah, the speedier your experience, the better, whether it's B2B or B2C.
Yeah, I would second that. Traditionally, it was thought that a lot of B2B purchases happen on desktop because people are in their work environments or doing something for B2B. But what we see when in B2B segments, the use of mobile is increasing. People are increasingly on the go and do their business on mobile. So site speed becomes important for them as well. And obviously, it just makes you look good when your site is fast, well designed. Even in B2B, it just adds to kind of credibility, I would say. And we have another question. Raphael, a great presentation. Can you tell a little bit more about the app shell model? Well, actually, this is, I guess, related to the solutions. So we need probably a web specialist to answer that. And luckily, we have Craig, I think, somewhere. Craig, could you maybe join and help us talk a little bit more and answer Victoria's question? Hello, Craig.
Hello. Happy to join. Yeah, so the app shell model, you can actually find more if you search app shell model on Google. The first result comes to a really good article by Adi Osmani, which will tell you loads about it technically. A short version is it's an architecture for progressive web apps that lets you reliably and instantly load screens similar to what you see in native applications. So it's commonly used for single page applications where you have like the menu and maybe the sidebar pretty much constantly available the whole time. So yeah, check out that app shell article by Adi Osmani. Just Google app shell model and you'll find it. And next week we'll be doing another video on progressive web apps so you can see more about some UX best practices for designing those things. And I guess I'll disappear now.
Thank you very much, Craig, for dropping by. So yes, and the article that I actually mentioned by Adi Osmani, somewhere below the video, there should be the link to all the useful downloads for this session, and in the solutions, I think the article should be linked out as well. But yeah, as Craig said, please join us for next week and learn a little bit more. And I think we're through with our live questions, and there's a final comment from Roland. Thank you for taking the time to conduct these studies and sharing the results with us. So thank you, Roland, for tuning and joining us online. Thanks to all of you. We're super excited to have you here and share the results of our studies with you. And we wanted to point you out to a few more events that will be happening in the future. If you're interested in developer content, you can sign up for web.dev live, which should start on the 30th of June. And the link to the site is also available below in the session description. And if you're interested in Google Ads products, we invite you to join us for the Digital Agility Week, which should start on June 8th. And the link will also be available. And as I mentioned, yes, all the downloads should be available in the session description. You can also rewatch this session or any of the previous sessions until June 9th. And please don't forget to submit the feedback form. It should be somewhere here, I believe. And we also send it around. Feedback is very important for us. We always trying to improve. And finally, yes, thank you to all the presenters for joining us for the Q&A. Thank you to all of you for joining us. Please stay tuned and join us next week for the Progressive Web Apps, the superpowers of the web and app combined. Have a good day.